Good evening. My name's Paul Moore, and I'm absolutely delighted to join you live from the Vault. My day-to-day job is Director of Future Screens NI, which is a creative cluster programme investing in the creative industries right across the region. The theme for tonight's discussion is transforming the city through creative connectivity. Belfast offers an important setting through which to explore ways in which the city can be reshaped through creative endeavour. Creativity and technology coming together offer the potential to transform place through new immersive experiences and through investment. But the key thing about that investment is that it must be undertaken with full community engagement. Tonight, we're going to hear three very different perspectives on technology and place. You'll have already noticed that this is a very ugly panel, three old men sitting together. And it would have been blessed by Deepa Manclair, except Deepa, unfortunately, is working on another research project that is out of the country at the moment, and so she can no longer be with us in person. Deepa is an award-winning visual artist, innovator, author, and chief executive of Neon, a health technology company. She identifies societal challenges and finds completely new and often beautiful solutions to those challenges. Deepa is a visual artist who explores concepts of belonging and identity by creating artwork that is deeply rooted in the communities which surround her. She has developed a stunning mixed reality street art experience. Through her work within communities and space, Deepa was inspired to create Tesuru, which is an augmented reality street project which explores concepts associated with the digital and physical spaces within Belfast and Hiroshima. On my right here, Michael McGlade is the CEO and Creative Director of Yellow Design. Michael's responsible for some of the most engaging mixed reality experiences. Whether it's building the Titanic to scale in AR, gamifying C.S. Lewis Square, or bringing Clifton House to life, you can guarantee that you'll experience mixed reality on a scale that you may never have experienced before. Michael has also developed Rovar, which is an integrated smart city platform which integrates with immersive experience. And last, but certainly by no means least, on my left, we've got Declan Keeney. Declan's an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose work has considered space, place, and identity. Declan's also core to a significant initiative in the city, which will mean that the largest virtual production facility in Europe will be located, yes, in Belfast. This facility will include a strand dedicated to skills and capacity building to transfer specialist skills associated with virtual production in a democratic and accessible way, in line, if I may say so, with the mission of Future Screens NI to make sure that we leave no one behind. When we finish the discussion and when our speakers have shown us some of their work, we'll have a question and answer session. And if you feel like it, you're very welcome to post questions and comments onto the YouTube. And I'll try and pick those up afterwards. What I'd like to do now, in honour of Deepa, is to show you a little bit of Deepa's work, even though she can't actually be with us.
Today, I'm going to share some of the work that my company has been working on through COVID. It has been an incredibly challenging year, but also has presented opportunities to look at issues in a new way. And thanks to funding from Future Screens, from the Arts Council, and from NI Screen, we have managed to pivot and test the capabilities of new technologies, such as virtual and augmented reality. And I want to start by sharing one of the first pieces of virtual reality animation that my company created called Retne, which will help explain the principles behind my approach. In Retne, you enter through a mirror, and when you return to that mirror, having completed your journey, the mirror reads Retne, which is the word enter spelt backwards. And at the heart of Retne is a quote from Aristotle. Creativity and technical capability have to work hand in hand and rely on each other completely. Neither can work on its own, but when they do work together, it results in the whole being greater than the sum of all its parts.
These books haven't been able to drop their letters for years now, so there's been no new stories. It's crazy, right? Oh, man, look what you did. We're going to get new stories. That's brilliant. New stories.
Discover ME, another project we've been working on over the past year, uses virtual reality animation to share insight into the lives of people living with ME and uses the power of empathy so that the viewer remembers what they see, hear, and experience with their entire body and not just their minds. With VR, we put professionals in scenes in the middle of real life stories that are normally never seen, heard, or experienced to help lessen the gap between actual events and personal experience. And now, with about 20% of people who have had COVID experiencing long COVID, where symptoms are really similar to ME, the need for this VR experience has become even more urgent.
My name is Joan. I am a mother, a wife, and a daughter. My world was always one of vibrant health, a happy family life, and with a career I love. But in 1999, I was plunged into a world I never knew existed, and I was stripped of everything I held precious. Overnight, I went from living life to the full to being rendered bedbound. There was no warning and no time to prepare for the nightmare ahead. I woke up with what felt like a flu, and I had no reason to believe it wouldn't resolve in a few days. But as the months passed by without improvement, and routine blood tests came back normal, I was told it was just a virus.
One of my latest projects is an augmented reality street art app, which has been launched free on Apple and Play Store, and is a response in maintaining tourism during COVID. This AR is based on Deep Love street art found in Dunbar Street, Belfast. We are still in the early stages of the adoption of AR, and there is a rush to create apps and experiences that are often too focused on showing off its technical capability or dominated by marketing and advertising. And a question I am really interested in exploring is, can we use AR to redefine digital spaces for positive action and move seamlessly between the digital and physical worlds? Here is a short trailer to give you a taste of what the experience is like. Suru is another augmented reality experience which assesses how physical and digital objects and information can coexist through the layering of content over the real world. In a twinning project between Belfast and Hiroshima, the AR Peace Wall app uses the international symbol for peace, the crane, which is called Suru in Japanese. And in this experience, the viewer sees the digital removal of the wall at Cooper Way to reveal a story of a little boy on the morning of the day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, on the 6th of August, 1945. Essentially, Suru virtually replaces the peace wall with a story of survival, recovery, and unity, In Hiroshima, many of the trees affected by the atomic bomb survived heat emitted by the explosion, which was 40 times greater than the heat from the sun. These trees epitomized peace in the aftermath of the bomb and in rebuilding a razed city. It is the beginning of a process to explore AR's capability to reimagine divided spaces safely. And yet it is more than that. It is an opportunity to explore the use of AR as a tool for social justice in international peace building. There soon will be 5 red cranes stenciled along the Cooperway wall, and the AR Peace Wall app is available now on Apple Store and will be available on Google Play Store soon. I want to thank you for listening today.
And thank you, Deepa. I always think when I see Deepa's work as an example of that thing that we spoke of earlier, where you have creativity, technology, and a profound understanding of the needs of the people who will be watching this work, bringing together this very powerful piece. And it reminds me of a quote I heard recently from Audre Lorde, who is a poet and writer, when she said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that in itself is an act of political warfare." I'd like to turn now to Michael McGlade. I've had the real privilege of working with Michael and his company over this last 2 years, and actually seen the way in which your work, Michael, has taken on a completely new dimension. So maybe you'd talk us through some of that work and let us see some of what your company has been doing.
Yeah, Paul, by all means. So as I say, I am very blessed to lead a very talented and dedicated team at Yellow Design. And back in 2018, we were 10 years in and asking ourselves, what's the future of digital? Where are we going with this? What's the next generation? And really then it came about that the whole episode of augmented reality was coming about, connectivity was coming about, 4G going to 5G, and all these underlying technologies. In parallel as well, our own city, Belfast, which is amazing, so many stories to be told.
I don't want to interrupt you or stop you, but just in case we have listeners who are hearing these things for the first time, what exactly is augmented reality?
Augmented reality is a technology that's built into your camera, into your phone. We'd be very much, so everyone's got a phone in their pocket or an access to a tablet or things like that. And it really is the interpretation of putting virtual content into the real world. So when we look around us, and everyone would probably know it more like Snapchat for seeing filters of giving yourself bunny ears and whiskers and things like that. But we just bring it up another level, a more professional level.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. And that was the kind of thing, I got to see it for the first time really up close in Dublin at an event. And I came back really enthused, and I think there's something there. We were able to pivot our skill set within Yellow by doing 3D, animation, graphics, video, audio, and actually we were just starting to investigate that kind of thing, Paul. So, yeah, and then I'd say just that, or in parallel to that, Belfast had set itself a challenge to become a smart city. And when they talk about smart city, they talk about cars that can drive themselves, they talk about all these fantastic things of the future. And we came to realise that that conversation was very much dominated by technology. And we were like, well, hold on a second, what about the user? What about the citizen? I mean, very, very important. So we entered that conversation from the other end of the spectrum about putting the citizen at the very much the centre of all this. So our user experience and our design experience, we really started protecting to make sure that a citizen never got overwhelmed with technology, but was more about embracing creativity and imagination using AR.
And can you show us some examples of that?
Yeah, so and I'll just introduce this in a way that, so what we done was we looked at our own city and went, what's some of the best stories that we look across? So in the east of the city, we have Narnia, C.S. Lewis. In the west of the city, we had the peace walls dividing the Falls and the Shankill, but the Good Friday Agreement is very much part of our fabric. In the Titanic area, we had noticed that so many visitors were looking in the empty space, trying to estimate and guesstimate what size this ship actually was. So I'd like to introduce this video that really explains AR 360, which is our platform in regards to how we have built AR to deploy across cities worldwide.
Titanic at full scale, recreated with augmented reality back on the Belfast slipways, allows our team to tell a story. A story where visitors can immerse themselves in time, in history, on the exact location where the legend was built over 100 years ago. Recreated in full 3D at 265 metres in length, Titanic can be inspected from every angle. Visitors can simply use their smartphones to also explore Titanic and admire the ship's amazing details, all while capturing memories and sharing on social media. Carefully considering accessibility for all, the ship's geometry can be lowered, allowing users to walk the decks of the ship. Walking among large markings on the ground, circles soon become funnels, compartments become clearly visible, and the infamous lifeboats also reappear. Transforming urban cityscapes into interactive hubs at large scale with AR is what we do best. Whether relaunching full-scale Apollo 11 rockets, or competing at virtual DeLorean racing tracks, or simply entering through the magical wardrobe of C.S. Lewis into the land of Narnia. Let's find Lucy's lamppost, Edward's Turkish delight, or the Beaver's house to collect our rewards. Allowing families to play an interactive game mapped out in a safe public outdoor space, we set the stage to free and unlock Aslan, while imprisoning the wicked Snow Witch and her wolves. Delivered in multiple languages, the C.S. Lewis experience can be virtually deployed anytime, anywhere.
Stunning work. Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing about the work as well, Michael, and we need to underline this is being done by people who have been trained in the city and by people from this city. Yeah. You've heard me say, Paul, in the past that, you know, I was fortunate enough to be the best drawer in the class. So the 30 kids in the classroom, there's always somebody good at soccer, there's somebody good at netball, there's somebody good at art. And I was very fortunate to be that thing. So how many classes are full of kids who can think creatively? They don't always have to be the best drawer, but it's unlocking that ability to think creatively. We're very, very passionate about. And that's what we're bringing forward, to develop these kind of experiences that are being deployed across London, Dubai, and hopefully into Asia pretty soon. Because that's the other key thing, because much of it is online, and we've learnt this from COVID, and it's a very obvious thing to say, but it needs to be emphasised. This is global now. This is not just about Belfast or the UK. This is global. Yeah. So we're using gaming technology, first and foremost. So it really is a case of the principles of using a gaming engine with 3D, with the content. Now still there's a very crafted way of writing narrative and scripts and things like that. But all that content can be built here in Belfast. And I love the fact that we didn't even have a visitor economy. We didn't even have tourism 20 odd years ago, and we could be the leaders in this worldwide. And what a fantastic story to go from zero to hero in that time using
AR.
It's really interesting you're saying about we can be the leaders, because over the last few months we've seen 2 reports that said that Belfast was the 5th most creative city in the UK, and that it was 2nd in terms of finance and technology in the UK. And I want to come across to you, Declan, if I may, around that, because that's manifesting itself now in this huge project that you've been at the centre of. And I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to, because I mean it's you and Frank Lyons that have really driven this, working with obviously the council and NI Screen and so on.
Yeah, there's a lot of great partners involved.
So
Paul,
tell us what this initiative is.
Well, I mean, it's an incredibly exciting time. And the city, I think, when you see the work that Michael's companies do and you see the work that Deepa's doing, the innovation is just second to none. It is world leading. What I'm working on, and I have the pleasure of being involved in an incredible team, as you say, with Professor Frank Lyons at Ulster University, is called the Screen Media Innovation Lab. And it's part of the Belfast Region City Deal Innovation Pillar projects, as one of the first to get greenlit, if you like. And what it is a £64 million virtual production complex. Now, I think probably useful to talk about what virtual production is, but what's incredibly exciting about that is that this is revolutionary technology. It's transformative. It is possibly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a place like Northern Ireland to as Michael's already said, to take the world stage, and that's the significance that we have here. And what Ulster University are trying to do by bringing a facility like this into play is really start to create a whole new subset of the industry to augment the existing film and television industry, to really put a fire under the visual effects industry in Northern Ireland, but also to build jobs at every level. So right through from set design, hair, craft, makeup, from joiners right through to C++, Python programmers. We need such a broad spectrum. So virtual production, I've actually brought some images of virtual production with me just to talk about to talk to it and for people to understand what this technology looks like, because sometimes it's hard. If the guys could run the video maybe just in the background, but this Screen Media Innovation Lab is a large 6,400 square meters squared, or 64,000 square foot roughly, a virtual production complex. It has a number of stages, sound stages in it, if you like. We're also building a smaller virtual production stage at our new campus in York Street in Belfast, which will open in October. But this technology is being used by Disney, it's been used by Star Wars, and essentially what it is, if you can imagine, there's different scales to it, but one of the main studios has about 5,000 LED panels that connect together in a big circle, as we can see in some of the images here. These are seamless. They connect seamlessly. You don't see the join. And what this allows us to do is we can also create then the ceiling with virtual production. So roughly 500 millimeters by 500 millimeters and about 5,000 of them. You can't imagine what this looks and feels like to stand in this technology. And as Michael has said already, in common with the work that Michael's doing, this will be run by photorealistic game engines. So essentially we can create a room or a space that you can build sets inside, that you can film inside, that you can shoot with a camera on, that actually replace blue screen and LED, or blue screen and green screen filming. And it allows you to have, for example, in The Mandalorian, where he has a reflection of a spacecraft in his metal armor, that's actually been generated by the LED wall, which is transformative in terms of speed, cost. So this is going to be built in the harbour, not far from here, actually, from where we're sitting tonight, which is incredible, really, in some ways, how this has been repurposed, that space and that land. The build itself is part of a huge phase of development by our partners, the Harbour Commission, who are building 4 other sound stages on that site. They have already got planning permission for that. And those 4 other sound stages are 20,000 square foot sound stages for filming. On this site already, Netflix have just finished shooting The School of Good and Evil in 32,000 square foot sound stages. So the Screen Media Innovation Lab is going to be built cheek by jowl right in the middle of the industry. And that's incredibly exciting because it allows us to augment what we're doing already. It gives Northern Ireland ultimately a competitive edge globally. As you say, there is no facility in Europe that has this feature set already, because inside the Screen Media Innovation Lab we will also have a large 3D motion capture or 3D scanning suite, a large motion capture volume stage, a second flexible virtual production stage that will allow us to scale from local productions to broadcast productions to children's television, right through commercial activity, right the way through to a full-up-blown R&D lab, and research is obviously a big part of this too. So we have the very highest end research, that will be done internationally in virtual production, right down to the craft and technical stuff where we need to build sets, we need to bring in sets, we need to build models. We can extend those models using LED technology, and in this case, a lot of it's built around the Unreal Engine. And so at Ulster University, we are also an Epic Games Unreal Engine partner. And that allows us to embed into all of our degree programs the type of 3D skills that are required to generate environments. So what we're already seeing is incredible companies like Michaels, companies like Enter.es, companies like Taunt, companies like Retinize, the list goes on, building
all Belfast companies.
All Belfast companies, Paul. This is the exciting thing about it. This vertical growth, as we would talk about, just taking off, and they are building new strands to their business. They are sucking in so many new entrants into the industry, and they're converting people that are already in the industry to be able to support what they're doing. And what we're getting is, growth in design, games design companies, for example, who have the understanding to build immersive worlds. These LED sets, if you like, are like worlds, windows into virtual worlds. So as you look in and the camera moves, the background moves, you can look around the corner on these sets. It is quite strange. If you move a camera, the corner moves to come to meet you as you move into the set. And this is the technology that we use called camera tracking. And so they are photorealistic, and there's such a demand. And where there are skills gaps, and there are significant skills gaps in this space, there is opportunity. Such opportunity at every level, right through the full gambit of the education spectrum and the professional development spectrum.
I want to, in a very ignorant way, and unknowledgeable way, try and put that in a kind of simple way for myself. So what we're saying is that we will have the biggest companies in the world coming to make their movies here in the present, but at the same time, this centre will also be in doing the research to tell us what that technology is going to be in 5 or 10 years' time.
Yes, absolutely, Paul. In a nutshell, and this is one of the unique things about the facility. What we have is a facility that will attract not just local companies. It will absolutely upskill and now create new technologies and availability of technologies that we have no access to on this island currently, that will now be available to Northern Irish companies in this part of the world, or the UK, or of course internationally. And so what we know for a fact, and we have some incredible partners, as you probably the audience would have seen on the slides, some incredible partners already internationally. They will come to use this. If they had it, they would be using it now, and it will come online in the next year or so. The first phase of this for us is the talent building and the skills building, Paul, and that's part of what we call a Viber stage. It's the virtual production studio that we're building as part of the Ulster Screen Academy at Ulster University, and that already will come online in October, which I'm very excited about. That has basically some smaller versions of all of this technology, and that's an endorsement as well by Epic Games in our animation to games design degrees, that because we're building in those 3D skills. And thinking back to what Michael's talked about there, there are so many other prongs to this. Virtual production is a very, very wide area. It's not just about LED screens. It's about green screen. It's about immersive. The environments that you build for working on these LED stages, these can be transformed into games. They can be transformed into immersive experiences. Michael's already doing this in his company, where you walk through a wardrobe and you're in Narnia. Well, what we want on a film stage for this is we want a photorealistic version of that Narnia just sitting there that we can film on. So when our cameras pan around into it, we can do what Michael's already doing on a mobile phone. And so there's this kind of crossover in this space that is revolutionary. It converges a lot of different technologies, and at the heart of it is games design. Who would have thought, that games at the heart of this is what's driving this, and will give us a really competitive edge. And as you can see on the slide there now, the 10x economy strategy from DFE highlights virtual production as a really potential growth area. And we know from all of the discussions we have that this will give us a really competitive edge. It will give our studios in Northern Ireland a really competitive edge. And you're absolutely right. We will bring world-class productions back here to work because they need access to this technology.
I mean, the 10x economy, Michael, is a really interesting piece where the first time that I can remember a growth document from government telling us what the next 10 years are about, and the creative industries are all over it. I mean, that's a significant move in our thinking as a region, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also think one of the things that underlines that is resilience. So see within our creative sector, I think in the ecosystem we have, from small agencies to the medium-sized to the large opportunities that are coming along with SMIL and so on, it's just that resilience. Do you know what I mean? That we've been tried and tested already, and we're raring to go. So give us the opportunity, get us at it, and we, Yellow Design, I guarantee you, we will be in every major city. Do you know what I mean? Into New York and Kuala Lumpur, into London already, and things like that. And it's just, we will hit that 10x.
And Paul, sorry, just to say, to pick up from that, one of the really important parts of this, and Michael and I have had these conversations because, through the great work that you guys are doing at Future Screens as well, there are brilliant conversations happening in the city. There's an alignment here now where people have visibility of what people are doing through Future Screens, and I mean, that you should be congratulated for that work, because what that's doing is allowing people and agencies to sort of see what is going on. We now, for the first time, have visibility of the activity in this space. They also get a view of the horizon in a way that we haven't seen the horizon before, and people are lifting their heads in this part of the world, and they're starting to think globally, as Michael does. They're thinking, what I can do here well, I can do well in London, I can do well in Kuala Lumpur, I can do well in Singapore, I can do well in Australia, and that's really exciting. But also we know from initiatives like Game of Thrones in the past and so on, that we can deliver here in Northern Ireland too. I was down in the harbour very recently. We were down at the site where the Screen Media Innovation Lab is being built, and I couldn't believe how many people were even just dismantling the set. The craftsmen that were there, the craftspeople that were there, that were working weeks after the production had finished, just taking all of that down. And some of it will be kept and repurposed and remanaged for another time in terms of sustainability. But the amount of work that went into that, the amount of people that were driving for that, the amount of people that were de-rigging lights, that were de-rigging, furniture, that were bringing, the list of posts and opportunities is incredible in that space.
I mean, you're being very kind about Future Screens, but I do think one of the reasons that we have been lucky, if we have managed to get that visibility, is it's quite clear from what you're both saying now that there's no silos anymore in this kind of work, this technological work. Each piece of technology is connected to every other piece of technology. So people are having to collaborate, they're having to come together to make sure they can deliver something, because not everybody is good at all the skills.
Yeah. And actually on that, Paul, what's lovely is that word collaborate. It's so easy to use the word collaborate. I've seen it panned around for many a year. But even for ourselves, and I'll shout out to the team at Retina is led by Jack and so on. There's times we've actually said to Jack, have you got our back? I mean, we're going in here to try and win business, and Jack's got you. And vice versa. Jack, you go for it. And Jack said, listen, we need a bit of support. So we don't compete against each other. What we do is we just back each other up. I mean, go in, kick a door, get the business, get it back home, and apply creativity to get it delivered.
And the other thing too, Paul, is that the technology is converging. And what we're seeing too is a very big piece, a very big part of this, and this is also being led by the international companies that want to come here. They're telling us about the talent pipeline that they need. For them to invest and bring big productions here into Northern Ireland. They, are part of their company, for that matter, to be involved in Northern Ireland. They want to understand that they have, a throughput of talent, that there is a foundation here for us to start to train people to be able to work in this environment. Michael lands his next big contract. They need to scale quickly. We need to find the people that will provide them. We can repurpose a lot of people who have, the skills that he needs. That we can find ways of training them up and getting them moved into that industry and any of these industries in a way, but we can also get them through FE or HE institutions and give them qualifications too.
I mean, I'm pleased you said that, because I was going to be very naughty a moment ago and ask you a question which was a bit provocative, and that is, if we had that studio tomorrow ready to go, could we purpose it? Have we the people to drive it? Have we the people to do it?
I think it's going to be a mixed economy. There's no doubt about it, Paul. The skill sets that are required to run a facility like this are absolutely in huge demand globally. we're seeing exponential growth, rapid adoption of this technology worldwide. For us as a country, as an industry in the kind of creative, immersive and creative digital space, to stay competitive, we have to race to this now. And this is what we're doing at Ulster with a lot of the investment. We've made £1 million investment in a small version of this technology for teaching and for tech evangelization and being able to bring companies in to show them what's required. We've already started that mission about getting the right people involved. We have people that are like people at St Michael's company that can already do a lot of this, and it wouldn't take them very long to convert into it. So we will also need to bring in experts and hopefully, diaspora people who have left, who have experience working in West Coast of America or in England or the UK more broadly, and getting them back here to Northern Ireland too to work on this. So, much in the way that when Game of Thrones started, it was mostly foreign crews and everybody kind of talks about this. But by the end of it, a whole lot of those heads of department were Northern Irish people from Northern Ireland or Irish people. And, you've got a talent base and a pool here that can attract, Dungeons and Dragons in the Titanic studio, or the School for Good and Evil in the Netflix studios, and they're confident that these are the top shows, biggest budgets in the world. I mean, they were filming in St Anne's Cathedral, and I counted 36 trucks outside St Anne's Cathedral. I mean, this is not a generator, a couple of lights, and a cameraman. This is 36 trucks. This is world class, huge budgets. They can elect to go anywhere in the world, but they're coming here, and we have got to keep that competitive edge to allow us to keep expanding on that.
And I think, to be fair, given we're talking about collaboration, and Future Screens is a huge collaboration, and we'd have to mention the work that's done in Queen's as well, and our colleague Michael Alcorn, who's co-director with us, and they're pushing in the same direction as well, and everybody seems to be coming to the same point. Michael, I want to come back to you, because Declan's raising the point there about people getting trained and getting these skills, and one of the biggest problems that we hear in Future Screens NI is that a company like yours trains people up to a very high level, and then they have to go somewhere else to get work, Berlin, San Francisco or whatever, to get work at the level at which they've been trained to. How do you keep your crew here?
We've got a balance in the team at the minute with older heads like myself and some young graduates in many ways who are punch well above their weight, I have to say, and the capabilities. And we are starting to ask ourselves here in regards to if these opportunities that look like they're coming at us, and we're working really hard to convert, are we ready to scale? Do you know what I mean? And we know that we've definitely got talent, which we talked about, but then all of a sudden, as a small SME, a small agency, you're trying to put the foot in the accelerator, but careful, put the foot in the brake so you're sustainable. Some companies can scale too early, too quick. You know what I mean? And it's always that kind of balance, and it's uncharted territory for all of us in regards to, has AR been done on global scale across cities? No. Are we probably the first to do it? Yes. And we're leaning on mentors and anybody else who can sometimes give you a bit of a steer and getting around all this, Paul. So there's a lot of things going on, but it keeps me on my toes and keeps me young, and I don't know if it keeps me awake at night, because usually I'm exhausted and get a good night's sleep.
We've had the privilege in Future Screens of working with Alex McDowell from the World Building Institute. I think both of you have met Alex. Yeah. And a conversation with Alex is like moving to another planet, because he's just thinking. Alex, for those that haven't met him, was the creative director behind, it's gone out of my head, the name of it. Help me out, Declan. The Minority Report. Minority Report. And Alex thinks in the future, but he has this great phrase, Michael, where he says that there's no such thing as science fiction anymore, because if you can think it, you can build it. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, and I mean, there are 50 patents from that film, which I think is evidence of that, Paul. That Minority Report itself, there's 50 patents came from that, inventions, and stuff that came to be manufactured, so I think that's a really interesting thing. One of the exciting things about that type of work, Paul, I think, and I think this is led by people like yourself and Professor Frank Lyons at Ulster, for example, and others at Queen's too. And it's rethinking and reimagining the relationship that universities have with industry, but also with community. and really starting to understand that, you know, for all of these things to be successful, they have to have very solid foundations. They have to come from the ground and be built solidly upwards. And, you know, we need lots of different types of investment, and that's not always about money. You know, the Screen Media Innovation Lab is a big investment and a big endorsement of, I think, what's possible in Northern Ireland, and probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that. But the investment that we've had with communities, with the skills side, the skills pillar of the Belfast Region City Deal is incredibly strong. And Michael was involved recently with a report that we did on apprenticeships in this space. And apprenticeships in this space, in the creative digital space, don't really exist here right now. There's nobody using them because they don't fit the type of innovation. They're not at the same speed. And so we're now looking at what we do need. And there are some great examples where we have agencies like Northern Ireland Screen, who are a great partner and supporter of the Screen Media Innovation Lab, you know, working and making some incredible strides in terms of the development of every level of education. And, you know, one of the things that they're working on at the moment, and I'm not speaking on their behalf, but, you know, is working through a digital strategy as well to try and, because we not only do we need creative anoraks in a way. You know, we need people who are really highly creative, and you can see that how it manifests in Michael's organisation. Yeah, you know, but also they understand maybe there are so many strands to these things. You know, even within virtual production, there may be 13 or 14 job descriptions. You know, and all of those skills are different parts of the jigsaw. But a lot of those skills are highly sought after now in manufacturing, because what we see now in health and manufacturing is that they want digital twins of the car that they're working on or the part that they're working on, so people can do what Michael does so well and they can walk around it. But they also want real-time information fed into that. So we're seeing digital twinning of cities, for example, and we've got people like Digital Catapult involved here in that conversation, and as our SMIL, the Screen Media Innovation Lab team, and looking at real-time information being fed into these models. So not only, you know, would it be a twin of Belfast, it might actually be raining at the time because it's actually raining in Belfast at that time. You know, or we might have heat maps and we know where, you know, there's a lot of energy being lost in the city, and we can go in and actively target those factories or those premises that are not insulated or isolated properly and reduce our carbon footprint. There's so much application for this technology now that it's fairly mind-blowing, actually, and the opportunities, you know, stretch beyond just the creative industries, and they stretch into manufacturing, they stretch into tourism, and they stretch into design.
I mean, there's so many angles to this, because it's interesting you're saying about the sustainability piece, given the climate report that was released today.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is an industry which is trying to work towards net zero, you know, and I don't know whether the digital can help with that.
Well, actually, it's very funny just that you brought that up, Paul, because every experience that we have talked about is, you know, the Titanic, the Narnia, the Peace Walls, and all that. It's all built along the glider route. Yeah. So what we identified was, if we incentivise and put these little honey pots along the glider, you're encouraging people to, first and foremost, to travel by foot, maybe taking out a public bike, and then hop on, hop off the glider all day. And we actually went, how far can we push this envelope? And this is one thing, when we first met, I spoke about this is back to apprenticeships. And how do you get like 13, 14-year-olds who are trying to consider a career? Well, we want them, we're selfish, we want them in the creative sector. So we looked at this, and right on the edge of Twinbrook, Poglass, the Colin Glen, there's a new area called the Colin Connect. Basically a fancy bus stop for the glider. And we're like, what story can we tell here? What's the community story? Does it relate to the Black Mountain? What is it going on? And then we came to realise, Back to the Future, the DeLorean car was built on the edge of Twinbrook. I mean, well, what about we launch a full-scale car where young children can go in, and while they're waiting on the glider, we have that data, what you're just talking about. So we know that that bus is coming in 14 minutes. And children can launch a full-scale DeLorean car, open up the Gulf wings, and then with 10 minutes left before the bus arrives, the car shrinks down in size and up pops a virtual racing track.
Yeah,
Now,
I've seen this is amazing. Yeah,
and there's the opportunity for young children to go, I have a phone in my pocket, I created the app, I can put it on my CV that I was involved in doing this. I'm telling a local story, and we are becoming a smart city, because it's all about the people, I mean, and creative thinking, isn't it, really?
I mean, one of the other things in the sustainability side, Paul, you know, that connects directly into the Screen Media Innovation Lab, for example. I mean, you know, the benefit to the productions and the benefit to people coming in is, you know, in terms of the environmental footprint is, for example, you know, they can recreate far more locations. The films can traverse more universes or whatever they need to do, because they can be created in an afternoon. It can be created in advance and they can be brought up in an afternoon. You can have, as some of the images show that we were looking at earlier, you can have golden hour for 12 hours that day and film, in 12 hours that day, rather than shooting for 6 weeks and putting people up. You can scan locations, for example, and bring those real world versions of those locations in, so you can really damp down the carbon footprint and the travel footprint. When you look at a Netflix production, I mean, you're talking about 130, 140 people traveling over and back, even to set up a second unit somewhere. So there's a huge saving, but there's also a versatility to it that's unprecedented. And actually, the COVID lockdown internationally, nationally, has accelerated the adoption of the technology, because also what we can do, because we have a 3D scanning, or will have a 3D scanning studio, for example, one of the first things you have to do now in productions is fully scan your actors in case anything happens to them or they get sick or whatever. Once you have a scanned version of them, you can rig those characters and you can get them to do whatever you need to do. And so those types of solutions will be available here in Northern Ireland. That makes it incredibly interesting to international companies to come here when you look at the quality of the other studios that we have available here in Northern Ireland.
I'm just trying to keep an eye on the questions coming in here,
Sure.
and we've touched a nerve around young people and so on.
Yep.
And Rachel's asking the question, how are we going to encourage these young people to get involved and to become involved? Because we can't be naive around this. I mean, we're talking here about universities and about apprenticeships and so on. And there's large areas of young people in our community for whom that is just not within their orbit at all. I remember going to talk to someone in a region, and I said something about ambition, and this person said, look, I don't want to stop you there, but you've got to remember that our young people live in an area where they don't even have a horizon. They don't know what ambition is. They've never been given that opportunity to have that ambition. Yep. Now, we're trying to work with Alex McDowell to set up a scheme which we call Story Engine, which will try and take young people that have in some way found themselves disenfranchised from their education or for whatever, and to try and give those young people skills by telling their stories of the future, but then link them up with creative companies like your own to kind of introduce them to that. Yep. Now, is that naive, Michael?
No. It's a very valid question by Rachel, first and foremost. And I just mentioned, I came from West Belfast, and there wasn't many graphic designers or opportunities knocking around. I can tell you back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. But as I've touched on, I really believe on top talent, and it's there. We just need to find it and encourage it to grow. And I didn't think I'd be talking about this tonight, but I do want to. We've brought loads of children and teenagers in the 5th year, the 4th, 5th year, kind of into our studio over the years doing work experience in May. 5 days. So what we do is we get them to look at the Happy Meal McDonald's box, and they have to re-theme it and come up with something that's about food. Day 1's about research. There's a bit of discipline, no matter what, everybody has to do their research. Day 2, Tuesday, they have to come back to us with 3 ideas. Is it a space theme, soccer, or whatever it may be? Day 3, we execute that idea with them, the drawing, the thing. And then day 4, we started visualising 3D and putting their designs on the box, and letting them see how it all works. And day 5, we turn it into augmented reality and put it up on their phones. So when they go back into school on a Monday morning, most people are going, what do you do work experience? So I was making sometimes Excel spreadsheets or tea or sent that there. This young person can pull a phone out of their pocket, watch this, miss, hit the button, up pops the McDonald's Happy Meal box with all their design. And that's what we tell the children on the Friday afternoon when they're leaving. This was your ability to go from research into creativity, into discipline, into execution. And as long as you keep your manners and remember to say, no, thanks and please, and be part of a team, you will value yourself. And it's amazing the transformation in their confidence. So taking that Happy Meal box and basically just growing that programme in schools and things like that really unlocks the creativity where children realise the value that they have and what they're capable of.
There's some, I mean, that's a brilliant example, Michael, and we've talked about that before, and I it really catches my imagination. I can see how that kind of constructive, but that materiality of being able to build something and see a result from it is incredible. Some of the stuff that we're involved in, and the Ulster Screen Academy is kind of taking a lead role in this over the next year as well, is summer academies, Paul, and we're going to be and I can't talk about the groups that are involved already over the next few weeks. Bringing a lot of young people in that particular bracket. Some of them are in that bracket where it's probably least likely but most able to go to education, further education or HE, and really trying to just give them that next step up, show them the opportunities, show them how they can get into technologies like Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is open source, it's free. You need access to a computer though, to get it downloaded, and one that's good enough that can run it, at least. But all the training's free. So with the Unreal Engine side of things, we are starting to offer training internally. But actually, one of the programs that we've aligned ourselves with at Northern Ireland Screens is the ScreenWorks program. And what they're doing, is doing some incredible work, and we have some really brilliant success stories already in the very early stages of students who did the first year of the pilots of those ScreenWorks academies. They have animation academies. They have, they're working through the Nerve Centres, AMA, Studio One. They're building sets. They're creating sci-fi films. They're building the visual effects for the sci-fi films, and this can be anybody from any background, and the opportunity there is to come right through and understand there are all of these roles. I quite often in the past with my own students deliberately shown them they go to screen a film and screen the titles, and they think you've lost it. They think, well, you've put the end of the film on. You need to put the film back. And I'm saying, well, no, I'm not. I'm making a point. Look at the job. Which one of those jobs is yours? There are 680 credits on the film that day that I was showing you. Which one of those 680 jobs do you think you would fit into? There's one DOP, there's one director, there's probably a handful of screenwriters, but there's probably one originator, but there were 680 people in that film. Where do you fit? And so I think it is about broadening horizons, and the more opportunities we can create for that to happen, Paul, especially around this new technology. And indeed, that's part of our mandate with the Viper Studio, the virtual production, the mini studio, if you like, that's going into York Street in the next few weeks. We will be able to create a lot of opportunities to bring people in, to show them how they can get into this and where they might fit in that food chain, if you like.
But Rachel quite rightly isn't letting us away with it, because what she says is, it's great to see this, but how can we make sure that it's accessible to many communities and not just a few? And hopefully the examples we're getting.
Just quickly, I think a 5-day programme of McDonald's Happy Meal Box can turn into a 5-week programme, can turn into a 5-year programme, can turn into a vacation. So it's that ability for everyone to work together, and it is that collaboration. We do need government support. We need the departments to click on this and go, hold on a second, the future is really bright in this sector. And as you say, the whole diverse jobs and vocations.
So one of the studies we did recently, Paul, myself and Abby McKenna, who's the head of apprenticeships at Ulster University, and this is a study that will be published very soon by Belfast City Hall or Belfast City Council, as part of the Belfast Region City deal. It's looking at all the different sectors, and very much understand, to go back to Rachel directly, it's about level 2 to level 7, and that language is, level 2 is just getting on the education train, getting from no qualifications to some qualifications, and actually creating a pathway for people, to get from level 2 up to level 6 in degree level, or masters at level 7 level, if they choose to do so. There are so many people that are capable of doing that. We've got to build those opportunities. But you're right, Michael, we need support to do that, and we need, it's not just about universities, it's about communities, it's about education in the community, it's about FE, it's about schools, and it's right back to digital strategy in schools.
The schools piece is interesting, because in Future Screens, we see it as our responsibility to go to schools and actually let the careers teachers know, because many of these careers teachers do not know that this is a thing, that their young people can go into
printer
this.
by now.
And it's not their fault, because they haven't time, or they're not getting the space, the teachers, to go out and find those things out. And so we've been trying to go to the schools and kind of tell them that. And that's, the more we get that visibility, the more young people will get coming into it.
I know I myself have been out and spoke to a couple of schools, and our teachers have contacted me. Look, last year we managed to get 25 going into A level, but we managed to double them numbers just by somebody taking 1 hour out and show her interest in the creative sector actually is.
Because the schools want to do this, they just have not yet been given the structures and the kind of ability to do it in a sense, without patronising.
But we need to drive that as well. We need to drive that and be proactive to get in with the schools and showing the teachers and the things that, look, we're willing to invest time, 1 hour, one school once a week, isn't a big deal. Do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're starting to open up that.
You know, I
think
think
it's
we're beginning to come towards the end of
Yeah,
this
sure.
discussion,
Yeah,
but I want to get, I'm kind of cutting you short because there's a great question from Lancy here that I would like your thoughts on before I try to wind up. And he says, he or she says, very exciting developments, but what stories will we tell with these new skills and
Brilliant.
these new facilities,
I
and
love that
how will
question.
they be delivered different than the stories we told before?
Yeah.
I'll ask you first, Michael.
One thing that's astonished me is that within every city, okay, I've called out C.S. Lewis, Titanic. This is only in Belfast. But when we're talking about, we say, look, we will go back and do more research because I guarantee you there's untold stories that we didn't even realise ourselves. And we've actually just launched one recently here in Clifton House. So Clifton House was Mary Ann McCracken. Mary Ann McCracken was petitioning sailors back in the time about facilitating slavery and how relevant that is today in Black Lives Matters and so on. And Clifton House was actually our moral compass and still is within the city. How we treat our poor, how we treat our people and things like that. And we've actually helped retell that story. So now when you go to Clifton House with an iPad, you hold it up, all these visuals, I'm not going to give it all away because I want people to go and see it, but all these amazing things happen. So there's just a whole deluge of rich stories to be told in every city.
I mean, I think it's a brilliant question, you know, and I think at the heart of all of this, this is about digital storytelling. You know, and what we're talking about really here in some ways is just different platforms for telling stories. And without those stories, you know, all we have is technicians and technical staff and craft. And that's great. And that there are brilliant jobs, but we don't always want to be importing our stories. And, you know, I think that a big part of this, and, you know, for example, actually I'm involved in a project I can't name right now just from the point of view of the sensitivities around the project, but that is funded by Future Screens, and it is looking at what the impact of this technology has on storytelling. That's precisely what it's doing. And we will go and make some stuff on the virtual production stage in York Street to test that impact and those possibilities. But actually for independents, and this is an independent local Northern Irish company that wants to do it, for them, the credible possibilities, you know, for the budget that's available to them, what the aesthetic and the finish that they can bring is changing what's possible for them with the storytelling. And so what we don't really understand yet, ultimately, is to give a full answer to that, is we don't know exactly yet what the possibilities are. There are many restrictions, there are many difficulties, many technical challenges. There's a way of working on these stages, but we don't know what they are. No. And that's the research-driven part of it. And part of that research, you know, and I know Queen's are involved in this too, is looking at the storytelling, Paul, and looking at what stories we can tell and how we can tell them.
There's a couple of questions coming in here. I don't think we have time to get them from Craig. Craig was asking details about what's going into the studio in October. What I would say to Craig, if that's all right with you, if he wants to email you, maybe you could give him the detail on that.
Very happy to talk about it.
That's hopefully in the audience, if they want to contact any of us, we can do that and give them some more. He also asked, will it be open to people in the industry with experience in this area to attend, or just for university students?
No, it's going to be open. 100%, as you know, Paul, from the conversations we've already been having. In fact, actually, we can't talk about them too much, but there are a whole lot of different opportunities that are coming online in the autumn for companies to get involved, and you know, opportunities to test the technology in the first instance, but also to work with and on the technology, and also to train. Through the Ulster Screen Academy and through Future Screens, the short answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, Future Screens are working on that. We're working with some national training companies to bring something in the autumn as well, which will be kind of ring-fenced for this area. Question from Andy, who's in Liverpool. You're very welcome, Andy. And he says, putting together a project that explores the gamification of both entertainment and education in Liverpool. So, you know, it's clearly the global thing happening everywhere. Really interesting question from Brona. Any plans to take this beyond Belfast? The rural communities are so neglected, and you are so right, Brona. But again, we're trying to work on that. Future Screens in particular has a number of projects in rural areas, and the one I always point to is the fabulous Louise Taylor, who works in Tapestry and is doing work there and is now digitising that work. And yes, one of the big thrusts forward will be to move into rural communities and to try and work with those rural communities.
Because Paul, just briefly, you know, rural communities just by nature are geographically spread out, trying to keep that more sustainable. You know, you see the initial funding, the capital, the money comes in, and then all of a sudden year 2, year 3 is very tough to keep that going. And the lovely thing about augmented reality and this kind of thing is that once it's kind of built and the story's kind of there, the rates and the rents and the electricity and all that kind of thing don't come with it. So all of a sudden you're able to go, right, well, let's build next year another story and keep adding and layering this up and tell the rich story and the fabric of what that rural community has to say.
There's been a bit of work done by the Policy and Evidence Centre at Nesta to show that the problem for the rural communities is they don't get access to what's available. They don't get access to what funding might be available.
Yep.
And if you can do that and get them access to that funding, even small amounts, and we found this in Future Screens when we did Rewriting the Narrative, where we just had £5,000 grants.
Yep.
Once they become visible, they create their own network. And they create micro-clusters to try and take. So
Goes back to what we talked about earlier on. It is about visibility.
Yeah.
It is about getting to see, you know, the talent base that. I mean, a lot of, you know, I had a conversation with a local company called Humane very recently, who are world leaders in digital humans, and you know, what really struck me was, you know, whole way through COVID, for example, they have people all over the place. I mean, internationally and nationally, working on AAA games. You know, these are top-tier games, and they can sit at home anywhere, provided they've got an internet connection, and they can work on this material. And you know, there's a whole lot of different ways that will work for people.
And also as well, just briefly, we're working with BT in Wales, rural Wales, about where we talked about the DeLorean, that you can be standing at a bus stop in the countryside in Wales waiting, and there's nothing to say that you can't be playing a game overlooking the beautiful countryside.
Sadly, colleagues, the time's got to us.
It was good.
And we're just getting to the interesting part. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Sure.
I want to thank you, Declan. I want to thank you, Michael, and thank Deepa in her absence, and to thank everybody who's been with us tonight. And all I can say is that what I mentioned earlier, we will do our best without in any way pretending that we have all the answers, but we'll do our best to ensure that no one is left behind.
No,
thank you, everyone, and good night.
Oh, thank you.